Feeling used, lack of reciprocity in a relationship. Human relationships are complex and fundamental to our emotional and psychological well-being. When we enter a relationship, we expect a kind of balance between giving and receiving, based on reciprocity. However, when this reciprocity is missing, a feeling of being used arises, and this can have a significant impact on our mental health and well-being. Reciprocity is the foundation of any successful relationship. When we give without receiving anything in return, the feeling of being used emerges and creates inner turmoil. This turmoil is a direct result of the importance of reciprocity in human relationships. The human brain is a social entity that needs to build relationships based on trust and mutuality. When this balance is disturbed, our well-being is affected. Reciprocity is a key principle in human relationships. This concept is based on the idea that when we do something for someone, we expect the same to be done for us in one way or another. If this expectation is not met, we feel used. This feeling can generate a range of negative emotions, such as sadness, disappointment, anger, and distrust. The lack of reciprocity in a relationship can erode trust and undermine psychological health. However, it should be noted that reciprocity can have a double-edged effect. When we rely too heavily on it, we risk becoming vulnerable to abuse and exploitation by others. Reciprocity should not be a double-edged weapon, but rather a principle that guides giving and receiving in relationships in a balanced way. Manipulation is a key element that can lead to feelings of being used. Manipulative people may appear to offer reciprocity, but in reality, it is not. This deception can lead to a feeling of being used and exploited. A study conducted by Elizabeth Hoffman based on the game theory of John Forbes Nash Jr. demonstrates how the lack of reciprocity can be perceived as an attack on the social principles of respect and obligation in society. Another challenge in managing reciprocity in relationships is the tendency to confuse kindness with naivety. Kindness is a desirable trait in relationships, but it should not be confused with naivety. Doing something that does not emotionally gratify can lead to feelings of being used, so it is essential to learn to establish healthy boundaries. However, it is important to emphasize that not all moments when we feel used are necessarily the result of manipulation by others. Sometimes, others may not react as we expect, which can make us feel unfairly used. Therefore, it is important to carefully examine the situation before jumping to hasty conclusions about the intentions of others. The lack of reciprocity in a relationship can also undermine trust. If we feel repeatedly betrayed, we begin to become suspicious and misinterpret the actions of others. This can create a vicious cycle in which self-fulfilling prophecy occurs, with both parties distrusting each other. Trust is a key element in any relationship. When someone crosses our personal boundaries and violates our trust, we feel used, and our emotional health suffers. The fine line between use and abuse of trust is important to recognize. We should not make the mistake of yielding to everything just because we feel morally obligated. We must learn to establish boundaries and defend our trust. Reciprocity is a fundamental principle in every relationship. Without it, relationships lose their balance. We must learn to say no assertively, value ourselves, and defend our trust. We must be careful not to confuse kindness with naivety. Only through awareness of these aspects can we avoid feeling used and build healthy and rewarding relationships. Now, let's explore some strategies and important considerations for managing this delicate situation. Learn to say no assertively. Often, we feel obligated to do favors or give without receiving anything in return for fear of hurting others' feelings. However, it is essential to learn to say no assertively when it comes to situations where you don't feel like giving without reciprocity. This not only preserves your emotional balance, but also clearly communicates your boundaries. Understand and communicate your needs. Communication is essential in any relationship. If you feel used, it's important to express your feelings and needs openly and respectfully. Talking to your partner or the other individual involved in the relationship can help establish a better balance between giving and receiving. Assess toxic relationships. If you find yourself in a relationship where the lack of reciprocity is a constant and you constantly feel exploited, it is important to evaluate whether such a relationship is truly healthy and sustainable. Toxic relationships can harm mental and emotional health, and in some cases, it may be necessary to make the decision to distance yourself from them. Personal growth and self-esteem. Increasing your self-esteem and sense of self-worth can help you avoid feeling used. When you realize your value and learn to establish healthy boundaries, you become less susceptible to abuse and exploitation by others. Develop empathy. Even though the lack of reciprocity in a relationship can cause negative feelings, it's important to remember that everyone goes through difficult times and may not be able to meet others' expectations at certain times. Developing empathy and trying to understand others' perspectives can help reduce the feeling of being unfairly used. Seek psychological support. If you constantly find yourself in situations where you feel used, and this has a significant impact on your mental health, it may be helpful to seek the support of a psychologist or counselor. A professional can help you explore the reasons behind these feelings and develop healthy strategies to address them. Reflect on your involvement. It's important to reflect on how you behave in relationships. If you constantly find yourself in the role of giving without ever receiving, it may be helpful to examine your behavioral patterns and work on achieving a better balance between giving and receiving. In conclusion, feeling used due to the lack of reciprocity in a relationship is a complex issue that requires deep reflection and the implementation of strategies to address it. The goal is to create healthy and satisfying relationships in which there is a balance between giving and receiving, preserving the trust and emotional well-being of both parties involved. I bid you farewell and thank you very much for your comments and testimonials. I invite you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and leave your comment. As you know, I always read them and respond to everyone with pleasure.